Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
We just started streaming so that people know you're in the right spot.
Okay.
And that one mic is on.
I figured that, so we'll make sure to say nice things.
Just because when people come into a stream, if they don't hear anything further away, they're like, what's wrong? And then you start fiddling, right? Okay. So they hear a little bit of background noise from that mic, and they see us. So
Okay,
we're on.
so they know we're on.
These mics, there's a push to talk. So if you keep a little bit. You don't have to be super close, but close is good. Grab a mic and make it your own. There's only four of you. Then grab a mic, bring it and make it your own. And you push the top. If it's not red, they can't hear you. You could keep it on if you were going to have a conversation and it was ongoing. If you definitely think like I'm done talking for a while, turn it off. But definitely have it red for talking. And then don't be constantly turning it off. Feel like you can turn it on and have a conversation. But if you're like, I think I'm done for a while, it's okay to turn it on.
Hey, look.
Hey,
Technically, I'm sorry.
you're good.
We're still early by 1 minute.
The mic's on. We're all good. Here, I'll take your coat. It's all good. Good. You're live.
I was explaining before you got here. Yeah. So you can leave it on as long as you like, but you don't feel like you're going to see anything for a while.
So red is on?
Red is on.
Red is on.
And I could write a thesis of why red probably shouldn't be go.
Yeah, but we'll just trust you. Thanks very much. Okay. So we're good? Okay. Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Career Week and the Human Resource Management panel. My name is Jules Fauteux. I teach here at the university, and it's my pleasure to be the moderator for this session. We'll discover what that means as we go along, but I think it means that I will be asking most of the questions, and most of the answers will be coming from the experts who are sitting here beside me. So. Couple of logistical items. First off, in case of an emergency, please make your way to the nearest exit, which would be one of these two doors, and then that way if you're going out this door, or that way if you're going out the door at the back. So, item one. Item two, please, no mobile devices, cell phones, things that go beep, please turn those off. Please remain seated throughout the session. That would be respectful. And we're going to ask that you generally hold questions to the end. If you have a pressing thing that relates to something that the panelist has just said, you can raise your hand and we'll be okay with sort of a informal interruption, if you will. But for the most part, we're going to try to keep questions from you to the end of the session. Fair enough? Okay. And lastly, I know a lot of you are here with learning passports, so the process to get those stamped will be Miriam is going to be at the back at that door, and on your way out you can get your learning passport stamped. So, all good? Okay. So now what I'm going to do is introduce by name and company, title and company, organization that they're representing. I'm going to introduce our panelists. I'm not going to say too much about them by way of bio, because that's really our first question. We're going to get them to introduce themselves, so I won't be saying too much about them. But I'll start by saying thank you to them for coming to be with us today and to share their wisdom. I think if we do the math roughly, I was on LinkedIn probing earlier today, we've got well over 100 years of experience on this side of the room in the HR profession. So not in the range of 100 years. So we're doing pretty well in terms of experience, and that's a good thing. So first, I'll introduce to my left, Scott McGaw. Scott is a partner at Meridia Recruitment Solutions. Next to Scott, we have Rojanak Zedige-Zada. I think I've said that wrong. Zedige-Zade. There we go. Close. Rajnak. Rajnak is Manager of Human Resources with the Halifax Public Libraries. Next to her, we have Natasha Murray. Natasha is an HR consultant, a human resource consultant with the IWK. And then finally, Mary Louise Bradford. She is a talent acquisition consultant with Stantec Consulting. So those are our panelists, and why don't we thank them in advance by giving them a bit of a round of applause. Thank you for coming. Okay. So, question number one. We'd like you to please introduce yourselves why don't we go in this sequence, left to right, my left to right. Introduce yourself, take a few minutes to tell us about where you work today, your role in the organization, and how you made your way into the human resource management field. So a little bit of your career story, please. Thank you. Scott.
Thank you, Jules. Thanks, everyone, for having us here. It was funny, actually, when he was talking about our combined experience of 100 years, what I actually realized is he must have been counting his experience as well.
I was.
Because I was like, the math isn't quite right. So I always say I was born in Moncton, raised in Dartmouth, but started my career in HR and specifically within recruitment probably about 10 years ago. Graduate from St. Mary's University with a Bachelor's of Commerce. And like a number of my peers I graduated with, was a little bit directionless initially, but found my way through working for large corporations like ADP Canada and TELUS Communications. And then, of course, I always say I was headhunted to be a headhunter. So I was actually sourced by a recruitment firm, an international firm called Drake International, I guess it's in the name, to be a business development manager, then a branch manager, and I've been a partner now with Meridia Recruitment Solutions, which is part of Knightsbridge Robertson Surrett. So we're a full-service HR company, headquartered here in Halifax, with presence in Moncton and St. John's from bricks and mortar, but we do national and international recruitment in through Boston, New York, and Toronto.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, my turn. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me, and thanks for the nice introduction. My name is not the easiest one, so you did very well. My name is Roshanak Sadeghi-Zadeh. It's a Persian name. I'm originally from Iran, and I'm the Human Resources Manager at Halifax Public Libraries. To be honest with you, I'm a teacher by trade. So back home in Iran, I was teaching physics and math to high school students coming to Canada. Immigrating to Canada, I tried to fit myself back to teaching high school, did a couple of months of voluntary work, and kissed goodbye teaching in high school forever. It was challenging, it was different. Then I moved to adult education. I went back to school, got my adult education certificate, and started teaching in colleges, in schools. Then in the meantime, I was working with the program director at that point in the college, and I was working with the program director recruiting, attracting, onboarding, training, and I realized that I was told that what I'm doing is really human resources stuff that I'm doing. So I was fascinated by this newly invented or discovered, let's say, field. I went back to school in Toronto. I went back to Seneca College, got my human resources management certificate. Was hired after my practicum, was hired by Bombardier Transportation in Toronto in the services piece, their facilities. Then moved to Nova Scotia 6 years ago, started with the province of Nova Scotia under the community services, most specifically the Housing Nova Scotia. And then I'm at the Halifax Public Libraries. Again, I've been exposed to public and private and non-for-profit, all kinds of industries in HR. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for having me as well. I'm Natasha Murray. I am an HR consultant with IWK Health Center. I've been with the health center since July, so I'm in a fairly new role, and my role presently, I would say, is quite similar to a generalist role where I'm responsible for a portfolio of managers and units within the health center, and I kind of support all of their different HR needs. A lot of employee relations and some labor relations, staffing and recruitment. Prior to that, I was working at Nova Scotia Health Authority for a period of about a year, doing mostly recruitment for specific units across the province of Nova Scotia and a large variety of roles. And prior to that, I moved here from Toronto. I worked with the Toronto District School Board in staffing and recruitment for probably about 8-9 years. And I supported every different type of bargaining unit, so lots of different union relations, labor relations work. And in a school board setting, a lot of your staffing is based on the amount of students you have, so constant change that would go on through that work. And I actually got into HR there. So prior to that, I went to Ryerson University. I got a Bachelor of Commerce majored in human resources, but I found it took a long time to, I was putting out a lot of resumes trying to get work directly in HR without the actual HR experience. And I ended up working in an IT role that had a similar system that the school board was on, and decided to apply to a short-term admin position, and then got my way into HR through an administrative clerical temporary role. So I've been in HR ever since and done quite a bit in my field.
Great. Thank you. And Mary Louise?
Great. I am Mary Louise Bradford. Talking with Natasha before, I have about the opposite progression with her as hers. I was a HR consultant, HR business partner recently, and just switched to recruiting. I started off, I actually have a Bachelor of Science, and then in my first year of university, in one of my classes, someone was speaking about human resources and human resource management, and I thought that sounded really interesting, so I started taking a few of those courses and switched over, finished with my Bachelor of Science, but also did psychology and the human resource certificate at the same time, so it took me about 5 years to get through all of that at once. And then once I graduated, I really lucked out. My aunt was working for a company, an engineering company, and they were switching around their staffing, and they needed someone in the office to be a liaison between operations staff and the corporate staff, so answering employees' questions about benefits and payroll, that stuff. And I got in there on a 3-month contract and just took on anything that was coming my way. And 11 years later, I am still with that same company. And I moved my way up. I did a lot of clerical type admin roles to start with, and then got into the HR and was an HR consultant for a number of years until 3 weeks ago when I switched my role within the same company to talent acquisition consultant, and now I'm doing recruiting, which I haven't done before, and I'm really excited to take on that and learn that aspect. But it was really by chance that I fell into HR and was lucky that I got the start that I did and just progressed throughout.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay. So now that we've introduced our panelists and had them introduce themselves, we have about 6 or 7 questions that we'd like to try to work our way through. For the benefit of the panelists, everybody doesn't have to answer each question. We'll try to sort of organically have you chime in on something that you feel strongly about, or if you don't want to comment on any question, you don't have to. We'll also try to get some balance, and that's kind of where my role is going to come in. I'll do my best. So first question relates to the strategic role of human resource management, which is a very important topic. So please share with us your perspective on the topic of strategic human resource management, the strategic role of human resource management, and possibly tell us some stories or give us some examples from your career experiences about how human resource management is strategic to the success of organizations. Would anyone like to tackle that one first?
I can go first.
Rojnak.
Oh, there we go. That's another task to remember. So HR has come a long way, even since I graduated, which is not very, very long ago. HR has evolved a lot. HR is not anymore about being a policy police department or paper pushers, let's say, or tracking and more administration and transactional activities. So strategic, and more we see that the organizations, they do expect from their HR departments to be the strategic partner. They expect them to be their trusted advisor, to come with fact, to come with data and help them make factual fact or data-based decisions. So I think that is so obvious from even 10 years ago or 20 years ago. It's so obvious that HR is expected to come prepared, to come with data and come with solution, rather than you're not allowed to do this, the policy says no, the agreement says that. So again, HR is really not about HR anymore, it's about the business. It's about how we align the HR strategies or how do we develop these HR strategies to be aligned with the business strategies. So again, like HR is really expected to be that change agent. At Halifax Public Libraries, HR is that change agent. We're at the table, we're consulted constantly on different matters. We're seen as the body of the law in the organization, the neutral party, or the neutral department that everyone can reach out, but also as that in-depth knowledge of the collective agreement, the policies, legislations, and best practices. So I feel like there's a lot of expectation, but in a positive way in the HR department and HR professionals. About an example, right now, you might see actually Halifax Public Libraries, they're evolving, they're changing, and we're going through a strategic workforce plan. And that has like 3 phases of defining and redefining our core values, our competencies, and introducing or reframing our service model. We see that the demand has changed. Now in the libraries, we see we're lending musical instruments. We have food in the libraries. Who would have thought of food in the libraries 10 years ago? We're at the airport. So the demand is different. The demand is more. The community's need is different. So that's why we need to change that. We need to make sure it meets their needs. And on the other side, how to staff this need to make sure we're staffing our organization properly, and what kind of training and development we need to provide to our staff to provide that need. So as you see, all 3 phases of a strategic workforce planning is HR related, but HR is not running the show. Actually, it's the operation and the business is frontline, the leaders, and HR is supporting it. HR is at the table, is being consulted. So these are the initiatives that are happening at, for example, my workplace, and I see the change.
Super. Thank you, Roshna. Okay. Anyone else, the strategic role of HR? Scott?
I'll give it a swing.
Okay.
So oftentimes I'm asked what I do for a living, and I think I usually unpack it in this way. I help companies and businesses located nationally, but most specifically in Atlantic Canada, solve business issues. And I say, okay, well, how do you do that? Because I know you're a recruiter, so let's cut to the chase. And I say, I do that by way of helping them mitigate risk. And I said, okay, get to it. And I help them mitigate risk by that candidate selection piece and helping them build teams that have competencies that align with things like strategic planning and other aspects. So maybe answering your question, pretty directly, it's inherent within that what makes a company successful. It is the people, and so more and more when we see the scarcity of talent happen, and I kind of look down here as we talk about the health authority and some of the challenges we have as a province here, economically speaking, and attracting talent. We are only as good as the people we have in that organization. So much to your point, the importance of that role, where there is potentially a scarcity of talent and in retaining individuals and attracting right individuals becomes more and more critical, because in essence that organization is a reflection of all those individuals and the work that they do.
Very good. Thank you. Natasha, he mentioned you, so does that mean you're next?
Yeah, one thing I can actually add to that, and it just something that you touched on there brings me to, we had a town hall meeting this morning with our CEO, and we were, our VP was actually talking about employee engagement. So when it comes to retention, something that I've found in my career, especially I've managed to be in organizations at very critical points where they're experiencing a tremendous amount of change. And as HR individuals or professionals, we're expected to kind of help support that change. A lot of it's by way of communication. And one tool is through employee engagement, which we use at IWK Health Center. And if an organization is keeping a pulse on their employees and is actually engaged in ensuring that they're connected to the organization, it does impact the outcomes, and that's something especially important in healthcare. So that's one area that I feel very strongly about and recognize as very valuable from an HR perspective in healthcare, at least in Nova Scotia.
Good, thank you. Mary Louise, it's always hardest to go last.
Well, yes, I agree with everything that's already been said. Our organization is really working more towards having that strategic HR partnership. It has been in the past, we've struggled with it being admin, more paper, policy, the police. We get that called a lot. And so my title last year just switched from HR consultant to HR business partner. And that was to help us align more with where we're going. And it's really on you as the HR professional to come to those meetings, to come to those business leaders with those, here's how I can help, and here's what I can do, and here's what I can bring to that table. Because sometimes you'll often get can you just yes or no this? What's the policy on this? And you need to say, here it is, but here's what else. And you need to add that value to it. We've worked a lot with my managers before I switched to the recruiting role and with the workforce management, and we have a large seasonal workforce. So it's been a number of years that I've been working with those leaders to really develop a seasonal workforce process, and now we can quickly and smoothly offboard and onboard our staff. We're saving money. We're able to flow through the winter months better, and the business isn't losing as much money through those time periods, actually making money some winters. And so those are tangible results. So if you can find areas where you can get in and have those tangible results, then that's really gonna help bring that strategic partnership.
Very good, thank you. Okay.
How are we doing?
I think we're doing well. We're doing well with our content. We're doing well on time. Our audience seems to be happy. It's all good. Thanks for asking. Okay, question 3. We're looking for some career advice. We'd like you to please describe what you consider to be the typical, if there is such a thing, career path for a human resource management professional. What are the types of entry-level jobs in human resource management, and where can they lead? Any general advice on HR careers today and tomorrow is what we're hoping you'll offer. And anyone can go first. We'll offer Mary Louise if she wants to go first, because she was last time, if you want to.
Sure,
okay.
I could take this one. I don't know if there's a typical path. As you heard from all of us speaking, we've all come from very different backgrounds, commerce backgrounds, teaching backgrounds, science backgrounds. I really think it's just finding those opportunities where you can get in there. With mine, it was corporate liaison, which was an HR sort of role. Then the company I was working for was acquired by another company, and that role wasn't technically HR, so I wasn't in the HR department. I still kept doing HR tasks because they needed to be done, and I really just sought out ways to make myself invaluable to that company. And I progressed I started as an HR advisor, then HR consultant, HR business partner. Now I'm in the talent acquisition team because I sought out and wanted that change. So it's really getting in and finding what you're passionate about, and then growing from there and really showing and proving yourself. One of my colleagues, she's actually in our Toronto office. She went to school, did HR, and she got into offers as a HR coordinator. So we have those entry-level HR roles. You're getting in, you're supporting the HR, so you're starting to see what's going on, but you're doing a bit more behind the scenes, report pulling and support that way. And then an opportunity came up for an HR consultant in her office, and she had done her co-op term and then was hired on with us after that. So she only had a year and a half of experience, and she proved that she could do those roles. She saw it, and she's now an HR business partner with the company, and we promoted within. So it's really finding a company that I think has those opportunities for you to grow and develop within them, and then proving that you're invaluable. I started doing a lot of funding, trying to search out provincial funding, federal funding for positions, and helping it tie with hiring needs. So then I was, bringing in money and showing that I'm actually bringing in more money than you're paying me for the year. So you should keep me, I'm not costing you anything. It's kind of finding those types of opportunities.
Good for you. Thank you. Anyone else? Career paths of HR professionals. Go ahead, Natasha.
Yeah, and just to add to what's been said, I mean, obviously HR, co-op, and student employment opportunities are going to be a foot into any door to even have that experience to speak to in an interview if you're applying to a job after the summer opportunity or the co-op opportunity. But I certainly recognized for myself when I was in university, my last 2 years I was working in a large manufacturing organization and I was doing data entry. And as I mentioned previously, I recognized that the system that I was on was a similar system that was a lot of large organizations used. And after a year, I was sending out resumes for a year and just not getting that foot in the door. So I decided to quit my full-time job and take this short-term assignment in a really large company, which was the school board. It was an admin role, but I knew that they had a really large HR department, and if I could kind of get in and prove myself, I could, at least start applying for jobs as an internal person and kind of break that barrier being external to the organization. So I do think, and I've found this in my career a couple of different times, that sometimes it's kind of zigzagging. Certainly anything in customer service, you can always be able to speak to transferable skills. Like customer service is the very foundation of what we do every day in HR. So, and you can often see a customer service focus even in jobs where you're maybe not directly working with a customer every day. So I think that is definitely important. In administrative opportunities as well, at least, when you're in university, you're writing papers, you have technical skills, that's transferable and can get you an admin job that can maybe lead to the HR job. So I think sometimes it's kind of the way you look at your experience, the experience that you gain just from your very education and the work that you do here. I mean, you're probably learning how to create interview questions, and that type of work is still tangible work that you can speak to in an interview even if you haven't done it in a job. So I think those are the types of, so customer service and admin, I think, are ways that you can kind of creatively get into HR.
Very good, thank you.
One more thing I add for the future opportunities and the future expectation or the future of HR. As you mentioned, as HR professionals, it's exactly the same, but again, like on top of that, the future of HR lands with how comfortable you are with systems. How it's not just about using the systems. We see more and more organizations are moving towards applying and employing systems. We see applicant tracking system, learning management system, HRIS, all kinds of systems are being employed, not just to replace that one-on-one in-person contact and the customer service that you mentioned, but also to free us up from those transactional activities to focus more on those coaching and be on the floor with our clients. So again, the future of HR sits with those who are very comfortable and just, again, not using, but taking to the next level, which is implementing those HR systems. Those who are able to manage projects, those who are, comfortable with change and managing those changes. These are the skills that are required for the future HR, again, in the new model we're going towards.
Very good, thank you. Scott, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I don't want to be left out on this one.
Okay.
So thinking about general career advice, and it's interesting listening to Natasha talk about her career moves as she made them. I don't think you're giving yourself enough credit because clearly you took a bit of risk there, right? Leaving an organization. I think that's an important thing to highlight within that. And really, I think it was a measured one because go in and make yourself indispensable in an organization. An opportunity will follow. And so I've got the pleasure of getting to meet a lot of new grads and people well established within their career and having career-related discussions around that career strategy. And I think the one sort of more general or broader advice I'd give is make sure to have a strategy and sort of contemplate that, because I don't think, for example, the example that Natasha used, like clearly there was some thought put to that, didn't really stumble through, and by dumb luck landed a great role. And so I always say this, especially having spoken before, and of course with Jules, I've had the pleasure of doing so as well, but in other institution like yours, your first role, it should be all about that opportunity, right? Less focused on things like compensation and other areas. It's really what is that value it can bring, because that will set you up for success moving forward and should be that enriching sort of opportunity and experience in organization.
Good, thank you. We're going to come back to more broad career management question towards the end of the session, so that was a good start. Thank you. Okay. Diversity management is another very important strategic human resource management topic. We'd like you to please describe any diversity management initiatives which you have observed or been part of. What were they targeting? How are they implemented? And any general feedback on the topic of diversity management is what we're hoping you'll offer now. Would anyone like to tackle that first? All right, great. Natasha.
Just speaking from a recruitment perspective, I know that typically, the organizations I've worked for, they're very aware of ensuring that the internal organization reflects the community it serves and supports. So they'll use tools, like organizations will use tools, particularly in public sector, that allow candidates to self-identify in terms of being a member of a diverse group or a group that's underrepresented in an organization. So that usually happens by way of those confidential surveys that you may or may not have seen when you're applying to jobs. You don't have to fill them out, but they are used in organizations, particularly in my experience when hiring external candidates. And if you have two candidates that are equally qualified, but maybe one of the candidates is from an underrepresented group in your organization, preference would potentially go to that candidate. So those types of tools I've seen used in all of the organizations I've worked in, and I would certainly encourage candidates to make use of them as well.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Diversity management, Mary Liz,
Yeah.
Louise?
Yeah, our company is really focusing on this right now, and it's a big target for our leaders. So we're also looking at training our leaders, because our company is an engineering and scientific consulting company, and we're Stantec Consulting. And so we have the scientists, the engineers, the technologists in our company, and we promote them to be team leaders, and they're the hiring managers that are selecting the new people coming into our organization. They don't have HR training. They don't have a lot of that background on that soft skills and how to do that. So we're focusing on training our leaders. We're doing unconscious bias training, so making them aware of that. It's really popular in our company right now, and targets around that. And so we're really working on making sure our managers are trained and know what they should be doing and how best to do that recruiting on their side.
Good. Just a comment on that. I mean, we know that in the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, math field, that women, for example, are largely underrepresented. Is that something that your organization is trying to change? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a lot of people in our company, especially in our local Dartmouth office, that are really working towards that. We participate with Techspiration, and we're doing a lot for the International Women's Day. We have some activities coming up this Friday for that as well, trying to promote that, and really trying to promote the women in that science and engineering technology programs. We have a long ways to go, but we're definitely something that is top of mind at the company for sure.
Great, thank you. Anyone else want to talk about diversity management? Scott, yeah, it's like what is that?
I feel like there should be a sound when you hit the button. Then I think it's an exciting time to be in the type of recruitment I get to do. We're seeing, and as you hear today, many organizations are almost using sort of that lens first of really looking at their organization more strategically around things like diversity and inclusion. And so having recruited over probably the last 10 years in our market, I can say there's a marked improvement on the awareness and the education that's taken place. And the reality is that it's not being done, well, there's a number of reasons it's being done. It's a great focus, but the net result of organizations that embrace those strategies and have a culture that I think is supportive of that, you see a really awesome net result in terms of the overall culture of the organization, but also its ability to be more innovative in embracing sort of diverse thought, but also by way of its representation in people too. So I'd say from the lens I have, I was working sort of an agent on behalf of clients. It ends up being a really strong selling point when you know that an organization has strong principles based in diversity and inclusion.
Very good. Thank you. Roshanak, would you like to comment on that?
Well, sure. A few more examples at the libraries, because the community and the public we serve is, again, we want to be representative of the community that we serve. And again, from the public side and from staff, internal and external side of the organization, we try to breathe diversity and inclusion. We believe that diversity is like being invited to a party, but inclusion is like being invited to dance. And we don't want anyone to be left out. I think, again, hiring diversity is really good. We're keen on that. But what can we do internally that our staff feel included? For example, we do celebrate all kind of cultural holidays. Like, again, if you don't celebrate Christmas, then you can work it or take in lieu and then take it as your own cultural, let's say, holiday. Flexibility or flexible hours, kind of rooms for new mothers. So again, all kinds of efforts is being done to make sure that our employees feel included in the organization. And of course, it's a work in progress. We can never say we're done. We're in the infantry phase. It's a lot needs to be done to make sure that we have that. We're actively involved in the African Heritage Month, mental health, the cultural celebration, Pride Parade. And also from our collections, we do have those lenses. We reach out and actively reach out to our community partners, to iSense, to the African Friendship Center, to Ready, Willing, and Able, to all the community partners to come and assess and audit our processes, our training processes, our recruitment, our succession plannings. Is it the right way? Can we, or what do we need to do? How can we bend the rules to make sure that our clients, our candidates, our staff feel included? What can we do to include them? I think that's
very good. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, I think Scott started a new trend. If you want to answer a question first, you just hit the button and the red light comes on, and it's kind of like Jeopardy, Okay, all right, good.
What is diversity management for 200?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I'll have diversity management for 200. Very good. Recruitment and selection, and many of you have got that as a focus in your work. Recruitment and selection are human resource management activities which interest students in almost any field of study. So more broadly, not specific to HR, but for students entering the workplace soon in any field, please offer any job-seeking strategy advice from your perspective as recruiters. And who wants to go first on that? Here we go. Roshanak.
I think that's a question that when I was a student, I was like, just, got my attention already quickly. I should say, network. It's really go find and have an employer of choice. Again, understand what do you want to do, understand your passion, but anything that connects you with the employer. LinkedIn is amazing. Again, if you have an employer of choice, quickly, it's so easy in your area actually to go search for professionals on LinkedIn, send connect, and then maybe invite them over for a coffee and, or just, go over to their organization, to their office and say, can I take your time for half an hour when you're at lunch, or can we have lunch? Anything that, again, it's a bit challenging, and I see that, it might be a bit challenging because it's a face-to-face, but you need to come out of your comfort zone. It's not easy to just say, it is actually easy to say, I'm just, at my computer, send out an email, submit resumes, and apply for a job. 99% of the job, honestly, doesn't work. You need to know who, and again, understand about the culture, understand about the organization. So networking is really a big thing, again, when it comes to recruitment. The other things, again, I'll leave it actually to you guys to talk about.
Good. Thank you. Natasha.
I found myself not that long ago. I just moved to Nova Scotia a couple years ago, and I found myself in this situation because I had moved here because of my partner's work, I was looking for work here and I literally had no connections whatsoever. The first thing that I did, and I had done this in university as well based on the recommendation of a professor, was I joined the HR Professional Association as a student. There, I know with the CPHR, I believe the student rate's $50. And that's at least a first kind of step to take to be open to, or it'll open you up to professional development opportunities as a way of maybe networking with other HR professionals. And getting, making those connections there. There's also a great organization in Halifax, and I know that they support students as well. It's through the Halifax partnership called the Connector Program. I reached out to them just, again, as a way of being connected to other HR professionals in Nova Scotia, and then now I can connect with, or I'm a connector to connectees. So those are two things that I would encourage you to do, because it is all about putting yourself out there and making those connections. And I know it can be a challenge sometimes if you're not the type of person that really wants to put yourself out there, but that is the beauty of LinkedIn, is you can start by doing something behind a screen and at least kind of break the ice that way as a starting point.
Yeah, and I can add in on that, where you talked about the Human Resources Association. Volunteer at the Human Resources Association. They run a conference in Halifax every year, and they need volunteers to help support that. I did that when I was first starting out my career. So that's a really great way to, one, get to meet other HR professionals, and two, sometimes you get to sit in for free or cheaper on those sessions, and then you're learning some knowledge as well. And Natasha already talked about earlier, just highlighting those skills. I used to work at Sobeys in the produce department before I got my role at Stantec, and I told my manager I'm finishing my schooling. I worked there all through my university, and I said, is there anything, can I help out? Can I help screen resumes for new hires? Can I help train new hires? So my manager was really great that time and let me help in those areas. But that customer service, being able to speak to the public and help solve problems, is key for human resources as well. So highlight that on your resume. Sometimes you may not think that's relevant. Different volunteer work. I know when we're recruiting in general for some of our field positions, if you have activities that involve being outdoors or maybe being in colder weather, that's something we'd look for, because that's a part of that job. It's not necessarily technical, but it's something that we look for to help distinguish when we're screening through all the resumes that are coming in. So little things like that to help set yourself apart.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else on that? No? Okay. We're going to move into a more focused area of recruitment and selection, interviewing. And here we're hoping that you'll maybe tell some stories, maybe without naming people, but I'm sure you've been involved in many interviews. A lot of them have probably been great, and I'm sure some of them have been not so great. So they're an important topic for job seekers and for hiring managers. Please share some of your favorite interviewing tips and techniques, and maybe some stories from both sides of the table, the perspective of the recruiter and the perspective of the candidate, please. Scott, you want to start on that one? It's your thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I can. I mean, there's hundreds of stories. Do you guys want the good tips or the don't do's? The don't do's? Okay. Don't try to have a staring competition with the hiring manager throughout the interview. Make sure to blink. No, one of the most common things, and it doesn't matter on stage of career, that I've recognized as being reasonably consistent, and it's about preparation. So if you have an opportunity to interview with an organization, whether it's a formal interview for a role that they're hiring for today, or an informational meeting that might be more prospective, where you're talking about their organization and your relative experience for perhaps future and upcoming roles, do not fail to prepare. The countless times that I've had interviews with individuals where I've said, so what do you know about the Halifax Public Libraries? They're like, something about books, I think, right? And so there really is, in my view, no such thing as over preparation for an interview. And I think it's just one, it's respectful, but two, it should be a no-brainer, but oftentimes people fall down on that. And so, a general technique or something to kind of think about when you're preparing is, I often say, take that organization that you might be interviewing with and do a SWOT analysis of it. So you can identify kind of, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that may exist, and that kind of gives a good baseline understanding, and you're going to do more research, because I often will say if you've gone to the About page of their website and can regurgitate that, you get a D. In fact, you probably fail, because failing that part is you should knock that out of the park, especially in an atmosphere today from an employment perspective where it's super competitive. So why fall down on something that's such a easy thing to do, right? And frankly, it's respectful.
Good. Okay.
I can add into that. In my new recruiting role, I did my first pre-screen as official recruiter earlier today, and the candidate was going through. In the end, I asked if they had questions, and they actually had questions for me, and then they were clearly on our website at the same time they were talking to me, because they were talking about projects that we were working on. But that's really great. This was just a pre-screen. It wasn't a formal interview. I just messaged them yesterday just to chat and make sure they're still interested in the position, and they were clearly doing that research. So that be prepared is really key to know why you want to work with. My first question is what interests you to this posting? Why did you want to apply to this? And so have a good answer to that, and have that information up front, and then have questions at the end. So when they turn it back around on you and they say, do you have any questions for us? Have a couple questions prepared, whether that's asking the interviewer why they joined, or what they like about it, or what the day in the life of this position is like. Have a couple questions to show that you are really thinking about how you would fit into this organization. One fun tip that I like to share is just make sure you be polite from the moment you walk in the building. We have a lot of leaders that will ask our receptionists their impressions of people when they come in. Mm-hmm. So if you're rude or not polite to the people that are coming in and out of the building, or the receptionist, that's going to go against you. So you're on from the moment you walk into that building.
I'll just add a little. You triggered something from my experience, that I worked for a firm once that when we were bringing candidates in from out of town, we would arrange a drive for them from the airport. And our routine was that we would ask the driver, was always the same driver, for the same thing that you referred to in the receptionist, like what were they like in the car, were they respectful, so we're watching from the minute they get off the plane. So
yeah. And we're really looking a lot to see, how, especially if you're entry-level positions, because we have a lot of people that have similar education coming in, and so we're really looking to see how you're going to fit with our organization. Do you have the same values? Are you really looking for the same things that our company values as well? So we're trying to look at that match as well.
Mm-hmm.
Please don't memorize these answers, though.
Yeah.
It's come across so quickly. Like, it's all about preparation, but don't memorize. Don't Google some series of competency-based questions and memorize. Be a storyteller. It's a conversation, and at the end of the day, it's really about a conversation. Do you really like the organization? It's the other side of the story as well. It's not just always the employer likes the candidate. It's the candidate. Do they see themselves in the organizations? And tell your story. You don't need to, make it a scriptive narrative, because it does come across. Tell your story, and it's all about your story, your experience. You don't need to explain about or talk about your paid experience. It's about your volunteer, what you've done in school. So it's all about telling your story and how to connect that story to to the questions.
And just one more thing I'd like to add to that is in terms of preparation, because I would agree with the panel in that, preparation I think is huge. But I also agree with you wanting it to be authentic. A strategy that I've always used and I've always recommended is when you're being considered potentially for a job of interest and you have the job description or the posting in front of you and it tells you what the duties are or maybe what the qualifications are, for each item I create an example that maybe I don't even have that exact experience, but something that's transferable, so that when I at least go into the interview I've already prepared some examples, maybe example of when I've been in a conflict situation, if it was at my retail job at Canadian Tire, or an example of when communication skills have been important. At least going in with some examples already prepared so that when the question comes up you have something to say. And to take, I always like to share this as well. If you need a minute when a question is asked of you, take that minute. Just if you need them to, sometimes I've even done it myself to say, can you repeat the question? I've heard the question, but I just need a minute to think about my answer. So I like to give that as advice as well. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that your best answers always come to you in the parking lot after the interview. So, don't beat yourself up if you think of a way better answer when you get to the car.
Very good, thank you.
I'll add one more thing, actually, and it kind of contradicts slightly what you said, because I've been caught in that as well, as people maybe going in wanting sometimes it to be very conversational, and they'll get stuck with those competency-based questions. And so you can Google this, we won't talk about it now, but there is a bit of a algorithm in how to answer that effectively to really be able to talk with enough specificity that shows that you'd have indeed that competency. I deal with a lot of public service clients that will have very formal structured interviews where they're scoring. So it actually gives less opportunity to have a more authentic conversation because they're on a mission. So don't fail to prepare that skill set as well, because it is a bit of a fine art to be able to do so effectively.
Can I just ask you to elaborate on that? In a public sector fair hiring panel interview context, where the questions are very scripted, what's your general advice on how do you approach that? Anyway, yeah.
For me, I would say it comes back to having examples to answer each question. That's why I really encourage using that posting or whatever information you have about the role, and for every line on that job description or on that posting to come up with some examples so that you can go in and speak to those, because often what they're looking for is the how, the where, the why, the when. And by having something generated that you can speak to that maybe, like I said, you may not have done that job before, but I'm sure you can make some type of connection. That's why you're being called for an interview. You're being called for an interview because they're seeing that there's a match to some extent, and it's up to you to kind of make that connection. And so I do think the examples are very important to get those check marks and get that score, per se. I'm
going to weigh in on that a little bit too, because one of my larger clients would be the Workers' Compensation Board, and they do have a pretty rigorous interviewing process. And spending a number of hours speaking to a number of people that were interviewing for a variety of roles that they had, a lot of people were falling down. So they actually had the experience. So they went in, they were literally doing the job they were hiring for today, but were unable to articulate it well in that competency-based interviews. And really it's the tell me a time when. And so there are things like the STAR method, so situation, task, action, and result. That's a bit of a method that can be used. But I think really to your point, Natasha, there's no magic, right? It's all in the job description. There will be questions about your specific experience related on what they're asking you to do. There won't be surprises there, right? And so again, it kind of all then loops back into that preparation. But yeah.
Good. Okay. Any other comments on the interviewing side of things? Okay, so we're going to move into, we're doing well for time, and we'll soon be opening questions up to the floor, so you should start to think about asking questions. Training and development, a big part of HR, and specifically we're thinking about career management and the concept of career management from the point of view of the HR function and what the organization does for that, and from the point of view of the individual, what people do to manage their own careers. So we're asking for any career management advice. We've spent a lot of time talking about the front end of recruitment and sort of early career, but later on, as we're developing our careers, as we're executing on a career strategy of some sort, what advice would you offer from the perspective of the job, the employee, and the employer? Louise?
Yeah, this is something that is really big at Stantec. We are really trying to work on our career development. We've just launched new training modules on career development, a whole new system where we go in and manage our careers for our staff. The key thing that I say to our staff and when I'm talking to them about career development is find out what you're interested in and what you're passionate about, and seek it out and tell your leader and make sure they know. Your supervisor is not a mind reader. They don't know what you really love doing or what you really hate doing unless you're telling them. So be really seeking that out. My career change, the recent one came because I was doing my career development meeting with my manager, and she asked me, what do you like? And I listed off, connecting with the students, going to universities, doing funding, really getting in with the schools. And she said, that's not a lot of what's actually a requirement of your current job. It was all stuff I was doing on the side of my plate. And she said, maybe talk to someone in our recruiting department and see if there's a match there. And I called my coworker, and she's like, well, I'm actually leaving this position to a different position within the company. My role's open, and my role is exactly what you just said you'd like doing. And then 2 weeks later, I talked to the manager, and 2 weeks later, I had an offer, and 2 weeks later, my manager tried to push it further. I'm in a new role. I sought that out. I had the support of my manager, but I sought that out. I said, no, this is what I'm really interested in. I thought about what I really wanted, and I took that initiative. I called people within my organization, and I took that on. So really seeking that out, knowing what you are passionate about and what you like. And don't be afraid to try different things. In our company, we say, people always think of the career ladder where you have to go up in progression. We have a career lattice we talk about because you can go in any direction. My career, this change is actually sort of lateral, maybe down a little more. If we actually went with what the posting was, I'm bringing more to the role than an entry-level position would be. But don't be afraid to take those changes and move around to get the different experience. In the HR, it's really great to have a generalist role. I was a generalist before, doing a little bit of everything, and now I'm specializing a bit on the recruitment side. So take those changes, those challenges, and take those opportunities and really seek those things out.
Good.
I
Okay,
can go
Rajna.
next. Getting a job is just the beginning. Like, that's just the first step of getting to the organization. But again, like, how to maintain that, how to get promoted, how to be successful. So I would say, again, depending on the organization or the job you're going to be doing, do not stick too much around your job description. So again, sometimes we hear stories like, you use some projects to involve staff, and some staff say, well, it's not on my job description. Right there, you feel that the employee is shutting down the opportunity for the next step. Yeah, it is not in the job description right now, but we're preparing you for the next level because, that's a big thing. The other thing is mentoring and seek mentors. Mentors I've been very lucky to have always at any level of my career, I had mentors, like, again, through association. I don't know, again, if all of you are coming from HR background.
Mixture. There'd be a
Mix
mixture.
up, yeah. So again, HR association has good mentorship program, or simply, again, my tool is LinkedIn. Reach out to the professionals in your field and say, hey, I'm doing this. Can we meet on a regular basis? Are you open for mentorship and all that? So mentorship is really key to the success.
Good.
I think too, some advice that's often part of some of the conversations I'm having. It's like, make your pursuit to become indispensable within that organization. So obviously, I think it's been said, there are going to be the formal things, your box that you get to fulfill, but have some natural curiosity with how the rest of the business works. Whether there are even social committees or other things to be in, like, entrench yourself in the culture. I would say, interestingly, and I'd have probably some data to support it, my clients don't often pick the person who is on paper the most competent or has the most experience. Most often it's actually that person that aligns best with their overall culture or fit. Right, and fit's really sort of something harder to describe, but something that they will see in an individual. So even if someone is more experienced or capable, they'll say, but I think this person has potentially more capacity and fits better with the overall team. I think that's an important one to consider as well. Yeah.
Good. Natasha, comment?
I've pretty much everything that I had noted has been said. Definitely the mentorship opportunities, I think, are very helpful in building your professional relationships and connections, and just your own personal growth. Having somebody to bounce ideas off of and problems that maybe you're encountering or issues, to have that objective, different perspective, I think is really valuable. I still have a mentor. I've had a mentor through my entire career, and I have a mentor within my old organization, as well as had used the CPHR mentorship program. And also around the generalist role, I do think that is a really great opportunity if you are, start in some type of entry level position and are able to get into any type of generalist type position. To have that exposure to everything is so key. My past experience was very siloed because I worked for very large organizations. Although I was able to get a lot of different experience within the roles, I found that I had to take some steps down and sideways to kind of get into the role that I am in now and that I really enjoy. I also found that I had very strong technical skills at the beginning of my career, but realized very quickly that I'm very much a people person, and if I stuck it out in the technical side, I was going to lose some of that people side that I need to feel happy with my day-to-day life. So, I recognized, I was a bit self-aware and was able to recognize that this is what I like and this is where I'm strong. So those are all the types of similar notes I had made. And one other key thing I wanted to say was to, and I guess it speaks to LinkedIn, having those connections that you can make online, but even the loose connections in your world. So knowing somebody who knows somebody and just taking that leap to reach out to them, that's helped me in my career as well. Putting yourself out there, as terrifying as that can be sometimes, it's very valuable for your career development and management.
Yeah, I'm going to add one thing as well that's, I think, served me well throughout my career. Ask for feedback, whether it's from your peers, if you have people reporting to you or who you report into, because oftentimes that can also identify areas or opportunities for you to, people call them blind spots. I remember earlier in my career I had someone say, go away, think about your blind spots and come back and let's talk about them. I'm like, but that means they're not blind spots. But I think through the lens of other people, and with a grain of salt, but sometimes it can be really enlightening because you may not see something you could be doing or you could have an opportunity to do better. And yeah, that's always served me well. Feedback.
Very good. Nice job. Feedback. Thank you. Great. Okay, so it's coming on 4 o'clock. We wanted to conclude by 4:15. I'm going to soon ask for questions from the room. Just to give me a show of hands, have we got questions before we actually ask them? We've got some? Okay, good. Before we get to them, I just wanted to ask the panelists if there was anything else they wanted to add, any question they thought they wanted to kind of offer a little more context on, or we're good?
I think I'll just add one more piece around the feedback comment because I think it's very important. It goes back to the interviewing question. I think it's a great idea after an interview, if you are unsuccessful, which will all be, everybody's unsuccessful at some point in their career for an interview or 2 or 5. Ask for feedback after the interview if you find out that you were unsuccessful. I think it's really important to help you with that next interview, to be aware of your blind spots. So.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now it's over to you for whatever's on your mind, and I think we had at least one question here, so go ahead. Oh, perfect, great.
We have an extra one up here too.
Yeah. Thank you, Miriam.
I was hoping to hear some suggestions for deciding what kind of industry somebody might want to, or helping decide what industry you would want to get into. If there's somebody who is already aware that HR is very interesting and they want to perhaps get into that, but obviously, as you all know, HR is needed within so many different industries. So making that decision. So
are there any industries that are sort of particularly hot? Good, yeah.
I'm going to jump in quick because I think there's probably a couple ways to answer your question. So I think I'd probably start by saying, find a domain or industry that's of interest, right? That will also help with success because you're going to care about what you do. But my firm today, we have probably about 60 people, and what we've recognized is there's only so many options to move up within an organization. I mean, we're still a medium-sized business. So we're really proud of people that have come to work for our firm and then have gone on to have really successful careers. Kind of call them our KBRS alumni. But in saying that, sometimes working for a recruitment agency can actually give you a really broad and diverse view of a number of different organizations. So if you aren't quite certain or if there's not something specifically that stands out to you, working in an agency environment can give you a broader degree of perspective through a lot of different industries. Because I would work with public, private, nonprofit, and large and small organizations.
Good, thank you. Any other comments? And of course, your own sectors would be ones which would be wonderful. But any other comments on how to advise students what sectors they might want to find their way into?
Well, it's hard to say what sectors are good or bad. I mean, again, like depends on really on what your interest. And it's most for myself is like when I have changed 3 careers, like technically 3 careers from high school teacher to adult and then now to HR. Like for me, it was more around not the brand or the name of the organization. It's about my values. It's about self-awareness. What do I see? Can I fit in? Will I enjoy it? Like again, understand yourself. What are your values? For me, it was diversity and inclusion. Like that's the first question I always ask. What do you do for that? There are a few things that you need to be aware. There are a few values, personal values that you can't compromise no matter what. Understand those. And that's why I suggested earlier that go have a coffee, reach out and ask about those questions, not in an interview session because that's a different story. In a the kind of a neutral environment over the LinkedIn, a message, a phone call, a lunch and learn, something that is, it's a neutral environment and learn about those values and understand, is this the right organization for me?
Anybody else? Tasha?
I would probably just add to that as well and just say that often at the beginning of your career, you may not have a choice of industry. You might just take the first job that gets you, either some relevant experience or maybe is in an area that you can kind of get you to the place you're looking to go. So, but sometimes that's very valuable because without sounding negative, you at least can find out maybe areas that you're not interested in pursuing for the future and areas that you are. So sometimes it's more or less after your first role or two that you'll have an idea of, okay, this is where I want to go and now how can I get there?
Just sort of building on that too, it's moving away from your direct question, but a good activity by utilizing LinkedIn is looking at some HR leaders today and looking at their career paths. What you'll notice is it's not too linear, but it can really give you a sense of what opportunity may look like and how many have moved through that. And again, it goes to a career strategy, right? So that first role you may take may not be where you end up for the entirety of your career, but it's could be a great start to give you that experience.
Great. Thank you. Other questions from you, the students? There we go.
Hello, my name is Jingma. I'm an international student and now in tourism program. I want to know, because now there is a big gap in employee marketing, so I want to know how to solve the problem when the organization cannot get enough employees. Is turn down the standard and give them more training, or how to do it?
Yeah, so when there's a talent war and when there's a skills or talent shortage, how do you resolve that? Is that right? Good.
Well, you call a recruiter.
Yes.
But to be candid, it can be served by the existence of organizations like mine. But what we've seen as well with a lot of clients that we help is that there is a further integration that's happening between actually marketing itself and HR, and sort of that brand awareness, around what is that employer brand. Everyone's been on Glassdoor before, or maybe looking at potential, it's a thing, right? And why having a good, strong, corporate social responsibility statement and being a strongly branded organization, that sort of marketing effort put into that can help you stand out as a desirable employer. But I think some of the consulting that we've done and that we've seen from a trending perspective is that marketing is actually starting to have a voice within HR and vice versa, because it is a competitive market today for talent.
I can tell you a story of my experience when I was working as an HR advisor at Bombardier Transportation. As you know, Bombardier is active in aerospace and transportation and manufacturing the trains and then providing service. So at some point we realized that our job postings are not getting the response we want for our train operators. Technically, everyone who was a train operator was, moving to Alberta or at the other provinces and not in Toronto. So what we did, we kind of put in place a 3-year training program. But that means, we hired customer service ambassadors. That means, HR, the HR director and HR senior management team at that time from Montreal said, give them your business card, go out to all the retail stores, to Loblaws, to Sobeys, to Canadian Tire, observe the cashiers and this customer service agents, whoever you like, give them your business card, invite them to an orientation and to an interview. That's what we did. We hired about, we had to, when Bombardier won the contract with CN, that we had to hire hundreds and hundreds of business agents or customer service. So then at that point, we were able to manage that mass recruitment at the lower level, which was customer service ambassadors. And then we kind of promoted from within, developed from within. That was the structure at that point. To over a period of 1.5 to 3 years, we were able to respond to our demand. We developed our own and trained our own train operators by hiring customer service ambassadors and trained them, and kind of along the way. After 3 years, we had no need. The demand was already responded.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can just add in, I actually report to our talent brand manager. So it's something that is really important that we are looking at our company, and to making sure what's going out there is what we are, and talking to our employees and getting their stories. We've updated our website the last year, and we now tell our stories from our employees. And our company does a lot of work locally. So there's local buildings there that we've worked on. So it really helps you create the sense of community. And you can see the projects that you've worked on as you drive around your neighborhood. So promoting that in your community piece, and really figuring out what's your company and what do they have to sell and what makes your company different. So that's what the companies are getting into. They're promoting themselves, because like we said earlier, it's a bit about not just, who do we want, and we want the best person, and we just assume we get our choice of the best out there, but there's a lot of competition out there. So we as a company need to promote ourselves as well and sell us to you, and those are potential candidates as well. So really working on that brand piece. And then internally on the HR side, getting into those engagement pieces, getting into those career development pieces, and retention, keeping your staff, ensuring they're happy and developing and growing from within. So that's really key for the organizations.
Natasha.
And I can add, from a healthcare perspective, the community piece and selling. The community has been a really big part in trying to retain staff and bring staff to Nova Scotia in healthcare roles. And then on the flip side, almost inverse to that, when I worked with the Toronto District School Board, for a number of years for teacher hiring, they essentially weren't hiring, but still making a presence at faculties, at career events, to say, this is our landscape. We don't have a lot of jobs right now, but we do anticipate in the next couple of years, this is what it's going to look like, to still be out there and having a presence, but be giving realistic expectations of the market. So it ties into that brand recognition and awareness and marketing.
Thank you. So we would have time for one more student question, if there is one. All right, there being none, we'll move to adjourn our meeting, and we'll do that by thanking again our panelists for great content. It was really very insightful, very interesting, and I was saying earlier this morning, this is like all the guest speakers you could want in a classroom setting you get in a panel environment like this, and you've been awesome. We really appreciate it. And so one round of applause in a second, and I'll give you, we have some parting gifts for you, a small expression of our appreciation. So I'll pass those out in a second, but from our audience, thank you, panelists. Great, okay. Thank you. Well done.